Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to episode 4 of The People's Cut. Episode 4 of The People's Cut. We're 4 weeks out. It's game time, man. It's the business end of the cut, 4 weeks out from the end of the cut or 4 weeks out from the first contest if you happen to be prepping for a contest, man. This is hammer down time. This is the business end of the cut. This is where the last 8 weeks or however long you've been cutting for, maybe if you start 20 weeks out, this is where it all comes down to the last 4 weeks. And this last 4 weeks, man, to be completely honest with you guys, this is what makes or breaks most competitors coming into contest, is what makes or breaks most people as they get towards the real difficult part of the cut. This is where a lot of people are going to throw that towel in, man. So the first thing I got to say is make sure you stay mentally strong, guys. Hang on in there. If you have to take it day by day, if you have to take it hour by hour, just hang on in there and know that within 4 weeks, man, it's all gonna be over. You can enjoy them delicious treats. You can enjoy some rest. You can enjoy not being tired and feeling lethargic all damn day, but just hang in there, man, the last 4 weeks. So, few things, we're gonna reach back into our cutting tool bag 4 weeks out, and we are gonna throw everything we've got at this cut now, man. It's gonna be tough, it's gonna be very difficult, it's gonna be emotionally very difficult as well. So we're just gonna reach back into that cutting tool bag. We're gonna grab everything we've got and we're gonna throw it at this cut. So starting with diet is gonna be the first thing. You definitely have reached a plateau by this stage, so it's time to reach back into that diet and take some more calories out, man. So once again, I always recommend another 300 calorie cut to push your body further into caloric deficit from a dieting perspective. So the way you're gonna do that once again is from carbohydrates and fat. So keeping your protein the same, as always, do not touch the protein. Try and take another 300 calories from carbohydrates and fats. And at this stage of the diet, for most of us, there's not going to be enough fats left in there to take a whole lot of calories from without completely shutting down your hormonal system. So it's going to have to come from carbohydrates. And because it's going to come from carbohydrates, that means that our carbohydrates are going to be very, very low. So for a lot of us, it's going to be around 50 grams a day, which means, guys, it's time to start implementing carb cycling. So where we have a bunch of low carb days where the carbohydrates are very low, and then we flip the switch and we go to like one high carb day or what we call a refeed day, where your fats go to as low as you can possibly take them, and you don't worry about the hormone effects of having those low fats because it's just for one day, and you bust your carbs back up. And we're going to talk more about that in the dieting part of this video. I'm going to show you guys what a low carb day for me looks like, and then I'm going to talk you through exactly how you go about carb cycling, carb refeeding, and making sure you're doing your high carb days correctly. The final thing that you're going to do at this point of the cut is with diet, all whole foods. So any kind of liquid foods you're doing, if you were still doing protein shakes, man, it's time to get rid of them. It's time to go 100% whole foods, because the caloric density of those foods, the fact that your body has to work harder to digest foods, to get macronutrients out of them, all those little bits and pieces, those 1%ers are gonna add up come show day or come the end of the cut. So all whole foods from this point. The second thing we're gonna reach into our tool bag and try and manipulate or get the most out of is cardio. So at this stage of the cut, you should be doing cardio every single morning on an empty stomach after taking your fat burner and your acetyl L-carnitine first thing in the morning, man. An hour of low intensity, steady state every single morning, and you should really start as well throwing in some high intensity interval training into those morning sessions as well. So typically, and you guys will see this as well, what I like to do is about 50 minutes of low intensity steady state and then 10 to 15 minutes of high intensity interval training first thing in the morning as well. And then in terms of post-workout cardio, you should definitely be doing post-workout cardio at least 4 workouts, well, 4 times a week, so 4 post-workout cardio sessions a week, and that should all be hit at this stage. Don't stuff around with list post-workout, low intensity, steady state. It should all be high intensity interval training, 15 to 20 minutes, 4 to 5 times a week. Post-workout cardio should also be in there. And the one other thing to note, you guys will see this in the cardio section of this video, is your high intensity interval training needs to be high intensity. interval training, which means it's 20 seconds or 30 seconds, however long your interval, your on interval is, has to be flat out, guys. You have to be going just everything you can give to it, and then you have your rest period of 40 seconds to a minute or however long you want to rest. But the high intensity interval side of the high intensity interval training needs to be high intensity, man. You really need to start pushing your body. Then we're gonna reach into our tool bag and the supplementation side of things. You should be throwing everything you've got at this cut now. Fat burners, fat metabolizers. If you're a guy, hormone supplements. You should be throwing your nitric oxide boosters, your BCAAs throughout the day, your BCAAs during your workout, man. Anything that you can get your hands on from a supplementation point of view 4 weeks out, that's gonna make it a little bit easier for you to get through this incredibly tough period, you should be throwing straight at this cut. So leave nothing behind in terms of supplements. Throw it all in 4 weeks out. And then finally, in terms of training, the one thing to expect in terms of training 4 weeks out is you are gonna start to lose some strength. You're just too far in caloric deficit. You're doing too much cardio. There is no way you're gonna be able to maintain strength at this stage of a cut. So what we generally like to do with training is to just increase the intensity. Of course, you have to try and move the same amount of weight because you don't wanna lose muscle mass, or you wanna minimize the loss of muscle mass as much as possible. So try and go as heavy as you can. Try and move the same weights you've been moving, but just keep in mind that you are going to lose some strength at this stage of the cut, and to compensate for that, you really got to bump up the intensity of your training. So you should be using supersets, you should be using giant sets, you should be using rest pauses, you should be using anything that you can do to compensate for the loss of strength, to make sure that you're still stimulating as much muscle fiber activity as you possibly can. And then the last thing in terms of training that me personally, I like to implement at this stage is to not do forced reps this close to a contest, or not do forced reps when you're this far in caloric deficit, because you do run the risk of injury. You know, there's not a lot of fat to lubricate your joints, to lubricate your tendons, to keep you nice and healthy. So generally what I would do at this stage of the cut is, rather than doing forced reps, so when you fail on a particular weight for a particular exercise, do a drop set, or do a superset, or do a rest pause set, but don't have your training partner help you force out those forced reps, man. It's just too much risk that you could do injury, and it's just not worth it after all the hard work you've put in. Guys, let's check out what I'm doing at this stage of the cut, 4 weeks out of the people's cut. So starting off with cardio, 4 weeks out, low intensity, steady state, first thing in the morning. Should be doing this every single morning of the week, guys. No rest on the low intensity, steady state, first thing in the morning. So for me, it's every single morning. I start off in the dark at the moment as we get closer to winter. It's cold and it's dark at 6 o'clock in the morning, which is about the time I start my low intensity, steady state. So brisk walk for 45 to 50 minutes, and then I've been throwing some HIIT in there as well, some high intensity interval training that you'll see in a second when the sun comes up and you can actually see what's going on. But this stage of the low intensity steady state is just a brisk walk. So I'll do a brisk walk usually for about 20-25 minutes, and then I'll head down to the beach and I'll do my high intensity interval training. Now this is cool. This is an actual interval in real time. So you guys will be able to see my intervals are 20 seconds on, 40 seconds off. So I'm just about to start a 20-second on here. So it's a flat out sprint. It's a sprint, man. As hard as you can go. It's high intensity interval training, which means it has to be high intensity. So I will do a sprint where it's my on phase for 20 seconds, and then I'll rest for 40 seconds. And I'll do that for 15 to 20 minutes. And then I'll finish off my morning cardio with a 20 to 25 minute walk to finish off. So that rounds out my low intensity steady state, plus the high intensity interval training first thing in the morning, starting when it's dark and finishing when the sun comes up, man. That's how you should be starting every single morning this close to the contest. And then the other side of cardio is your post-workout high intensity interval training. So once again, this is an actual interval here. Similarly for me, I'm doing 20 seconds on and 40 seconds off, and post-workout needs to be between 15 and 20 minutes. And I'm doing this 4 to 5 times a week. So pretty much after every single workout, I'll hop straight onto the elliptical trainer and really just go as hard as I possibly can for that 20-second on period, and then have that 40-second off period, which is it's a rest period. I mean, like, you can see the set pace here. It's not intense at all. It's a complete rest period. Let that heart rate come back down before you fire it back up for the 20 seconds. The one thing I have to stress, guys, is you see with my on period here, I'm flat out. I'm leaving nothing in the tank. A lot of people think they do high intensity interval training. They ain't doing nothing high intensity at all, man. At best, it's medium intensity. When you are in your on period of your high intensity interval training, it's flat out. It's as hard as you can possibly go. You're trying to push your heart rate as high as it can possibly go for a short period of time before letting it come back down and rest and recover. So just ensure with your high intensity intervals that you're doing just that. You're just going flat out as hard as you possibly can for that short period of time. And then for the rest period, you can pretty much do nothing. Just let your heart rate come back down. And moving straight on to diet. So like I said, you guys right here, this is a low carb day for me. So starting off on my low carb day or zero carb day at the moment, I start off with some egg whites, some egg yolks, some spring onions, and some mushrooms in there. So this particular meal gets me about 50 grams of protein, 0 grams of carbs, and about 15 grams of fat. And then obviously I got my morning supplements in there that you guys will see in there in a second. Moving straight on to meal number 2, it's a mixture of chicken and turkey, and then I've got some broccoli in there and some almonds. So all of my meals on these low carb days are the same macros. They're trying to hit 50 grams of protein, it's about 15 grams of fat, and then just a little bit of some bits and pieces that I get from 100 grams of greens in there. And I've moved from BCAAs onto Optimum Nutrition's Essential Amino Energy. The bit of caffeine in there is helping my brain switch on, helping me keep sane when my energy levels are this low. Similarly, meal number 3, very similar once again. The greens are switched out from broccoli to baby spinach, it looks like there, man. So I mix my greens up just to keep it fresh. Sometimes it's broccoli, sometimes it's baby spinach, sometimes it's asparagus, sometimes it's broccolini. I'm not really too fussed. And then meal number 4, once again, this is boring as hell, but it's exactly the same thing. A mixture of grilled chicken and grilled turkey, some broccoli in there, and some almonds for the fats. All of these meals, like I said, guys, 50 grams of protein, not a single gram of carbohydrate, and then 15 grams of fat from the almonds and a bit from the meat there too. And then my post-workout meal, once again, it's a low carb day, so I'm not even getting carbs post-workout. No carbs in here for me on this here low carb day. Once again, I just dropped my broccoli there. It's just protein from a mixture of chicken and turkey, the greens in there for the fiber, and then the almonds in there for the fats. And then finally, my pre-bed meal, exactly the same once again. This is one of the reasons why when you get to this stage of the cut, it becomes very mentally draining because it's the same thing over and over again. So that's what low carb days look like for me, guys. So those are typically most of my days at this stage of a cut. So what I'll do is I'll run low carb days like that for 2 to 3 days. So exactly the meals that you just saw, and my macros on those particular days are about 350 protein, 0 carb, and about 80 grams of fat. And I'll run those days for 2 to 3 days, and then I'll have what I call a carb refeed or a high carb or a carb cycling day where I increase my carbohydrate intake. The one thing to note, the reason why you want to do that with your carb cycling is because when you're on very low carbohydrates, and as you just see with me, it's actually 0 carbohydrates, is you have this particular hormone responses and your metabolism starts to slow down. So your thyroid hormone drops, your T3 hormone drops, your leptin levels drop, and your body actually stops burning body fat because you effectively enter survival mode. So what carb cycling does is it actually tricks your body into being able to be on a very low carbohydrate diet and deplete those glycogen levels so that your body is able to burn fat, but then you're giving it that signal to continue to burn fat with a high carb day that's going to boost up your thyroid hormone, your T3 hormone, your leptin level hormones as well. That's just going to keep that fat burning furnace going. So typically what I will do on a high carb day is my protein intake gets cut by about 1/3. And this is generally accepted way of carb cycling. This is what I personally recommend you guys do as well. So I would go from a low carb day where my protein intake is 350 down to a high carb day. My protein intake drops to about 120 grams. So that's not a lot of protein at all. It's a tiny amount of protein actually. The amount of meat in a particular meal is almost insignificant. So my protein intake drops to about 120, and then what that does is it gives me a lot of space to add carbohydrates in there to make up that calories. So the one thing that you want to keep in mind on your high carb days is your caloric intake stays the same. So you don't want to increase the amount of calories that you're consuming, because that's going to put you into caloric surplus and actually cause you to gain weight on that particular day. You want to keep your caloric intake exactly the same. So to do that, you need to remove some calories from protein, and you need to remove some calories from fats to allow you to have space to increase your carbohydrate intake. So like I said, my protein will go down to about 120. My fat goes down to nothing. So pretty much the only fats I consume are what's in the meat from the protein. So my fats on those days are around 15 to 20 grams of fat, which is just naturally occurring fats from the meats that I'm eating. And then my carbohydrates on those particular days is around 300 to 350 grams. So I'm going from 2 to 3 days of zero carbohydrates to that one day where your carbohydrate intake is very high, 300 to 350 grams, which for me is even more than I would consume in the off season. And that's really going to continue to spark that metabolism along. The one thing to note with your high carb days is your carbohydrates should primarily be low GI carbohydrates. So we're talking oats, we're talking brown rice, we're talking sweet potato if you want to do sweet potato. Low GI carbohydrates, so don't go throwing a bunch of sugars in there and all those bad type of carbs. You just want to be able to give your body that stimulation to continue to burn fat. So don't be throwing sugars in there. Keep them low GI carbs. And then your carbohydrate timing principles are exactly the same. So even though it's a high carb day, don't go spreading those carbs evenly throughout the day. You only need to get them first thing in the morning, pre-workout, intra-workout, and post-workout. Those are the only 4 times you want carbs. So take that 300 to 350 grams or however many grams it may be for you and spread them over those times. So you can spread them pretty much however you want. Typically what I would be doing is I would be doing about a 20% of that overall carbohydrate intake first thing in the morning. I'll then do 30% 30% pre-workout, 20% intra-workout, and then 30% post-workout. So for me, it's pretty evenly spread throughout those 4 meals, but the one thing to note is you don't need carbs in every single meal. So just keep to the carbohydrate timing principles that we've kept throughout this entire cut, and that's gonna allow you to do that carb cycling and continue to burn body fat without running the risk of actually gaining weight again. And that, guys, is how we recommend you do carb cycling at this stage of the people's cut. And then we're on to supplements. So supplements 4 weeks out, you're throwing everything you've got at it. So the first thing for me is my pre-cardio supplements, Platinum Labs OptiBurn Fat Burner, Creation Supplements, Alka-Pure Acetyl-L-Carnitine Fat Metabolizer. I'm doing 1 scoop of OptiBurn in a glass and about 2 grams of Alka-Pure. I actually used an old OptiBurn scoop there for my Alka-Pure. Throw that in there, mix that up first thing in the morning on an empty stomach before I go and do my low intensity, steady state and high intensity interval training morning cardio. Then I come back and I got my breakfast SUPPS. So 2 scoops of BioGrow, 1 scoop of Blackstone Labs Eradicate Anti-Estrogen, 1 scoop of the Beast Super Test Testosterone Booster. I got 2 scoops of Concrete Creatine Hydrochloride, and then 2 scoops of this Orange Tribe, which is a multivitamin plus green supplement that I've been trying out. I'm not sure if we're going to carry it. I don't really like it, to be completely honest. Throw that all in the shaker, and that's my breakfast supplementation at this stage of the people's cut. The next supplementation is a pre-workout sup. So once again, Creation Supplements, Alka-Pure, the Fat Metabolizer. I've been throwing this Glyco Energy GPLC nitric oxide booster in there, and of course my personal favorite pre-workout, 2 scoops of MTS Clash in the house. Go and throw that in my Team Massive Joe's Performance Smart Shaker, and I'm good to go. And then intra-workout supplementation, once again, another scoop of GPLC in there, 2 scoops of MTS Machine Fuel BCAAs. Because this is a low carb day, there's no carbolin in there anymore either. So my low carb days are 0 carbs, guys. That means no carbs from nowhere. So it's just BCAAs and a nitric oxide booster in there for me at this stage of the cut. And then after that, we move on to post-workout supplementation, which for me is my concrete, my 2 scoops of pineapple concrete. If you want to use creatine monohydrate, man, that's your prerogative, that's your choice. I just get better results from creatine hydrochloride, which is why I prefer to use concrete, and it's flavored as well, man. So at this stage, nothing really tastes that great from my foods. So I'm gonna go grab myself a fork instead of a spoon, mix up this here concrete and get some nice pineapple post-workout recovery going on, and I have that with my post-workout meal in there. And then we're on to the final stage of supplementation for me at this stage of the People's Cut, which is going to be my pre-bed supplementation. So once again, 2 scoops of Isatori BioGrow, 1 scoop of Blackstone Labs Eradicate, 1 scoop of Beast Super Test, and I'll be throwing in a scoop of Resurrect PM in there, man. Make sure I'm getting the most out of my sleep. Throw all of that in there, and that rounds out supplementation for this stage of the People's Cut. And then straight away we're on to training. Like I said at the start of this video, guys, training at this stage of the cut 4 weeks out, you are going to start to lose strength. There's just nothing you can do about it. You're too far in a caloric deficit. You're asking a lot of your body, so you're just not going to be able to move the sort of weights that you're used to moving for the sort of rep ranges that you're used to moving them for. So you really have to try and intensify your workouts as much as possible. So what you're seeing here is a little bit of a shoulder workout. You're gonna see, I'm pretty sure I did a triple drop set with some rest pause in there. So I've done 1 drop here with the dumbbell lateral raises. Got some partial reps down the bottom there. Now I'm going on for my 2nd drop set in here. And like I said, no spot. So I'm not getting no force reps out, man. I don't want to do no injuries or nothing like that. Just taking the muscle as far as I possibly can, taking it to failure, getting some partial reps and not really pushing anything past failure, and just trying to train as intensely as I possibly can and trying as hard as I can to move the same kind of poundages, the same kind of weights. And here, just to finish off, I've gone from a seated position into a standing position just to really use a bit of body English to try and get those reps up and really try and intensify this particular exercise. So yeah, you just have to try and move the kind of weights you're used to moving, but just be prepared that you're not going to be able to get the kind of rep ranges that you're used to be getting. And then just another part of this workout as well, went to some upright rows. Once again, trying to intensify as much as I can. So here, I think once again, I did a double drop set in here too. So just pushing as hard as you can possibly push. I mean, this was a low carb day workout for me as well. So there's not a lot of fuel to push through, and especially on your low carb days when you reach muscle failure, there's just no turning back. You really can't push through it because your body has no glycogen to tap into. It has no fuel to tap into to help you push through those force reps, to help you push through that failure. So you're just trying to push as hard as you can, trying to get your mind in a state where you can just try and move the same poundages, do as many different intensifying techniques as you can possibly do, your drop sets, your rest pauses. You see I do a lot of partial reps just to completely take the muscle as far as you can take it without pushing it past failure. And that's really all you can ask of yourself in terms of training at this stage of the People's Cut. And we're just hitting some nice shoulder shots here as well, squeezing the muscle, putting as much blood into the muscle as we possibly can, and that rounds out training. So there you go, guys, episode 4 of the People's Cut. 4 weeks out from the contest or 4 weeks out from the end of the cut, depending on your goal. That's what you're trying to do. Those are the tools you're using to keep pushing through plateaus. You've seen what I'm doing at this stage of the cut and how everything's working for me. So that's it. That's 4 weeks out. The next episode you guys are gonna see is probably actually gonna be on show day. So we're shooting over to the WBFF Australian Championships over in Sydney, and we're taking Adil, our media manager, with us. And he's going to film as much of that as he possibly can. So we'll try and show you a little bit of, you know, the few days before the comp, how you do a carb deplete, how you do a carb load, what you do with water leading up to a contest, all those kind of bits and pieces and those little tips and tricks that athletes use coming into shows. But so far as the actual cutting process, that's pretty much it. I mean, 4 weeks out, you don't really have a whole lot of tools left you can use. We've already implemented carb cycling, where you've got a little bit more cardio that you can do. Your supplementation is peaking, your training is peaking. You pretty much just ride it for as long as you can ride it, get as lean as you possibly can get until you reach the end point of your cut, or until your body stops responding. And then at that stage, it's time to start either competing or reverse dieting out of it and getting ready for for a bulking period until you decide to start your next cut. So guys, that is episode 4 of the People's Cut. As always, if you have any questions at all, please post them as a comment to this video on our YouTube channel, man, and we will get back to every single question. I promise you that. I will personally, as much as I can, personally answer every single question you guys post. It's the People's Cut. We're doing it for you, baby. Guys, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, man. Stay up to date with all the latest editions of the People's Cut. We will see you guys in 4 weeks at the WBFF Australia Championships. And guys, that is episode 4 of the People's Cuts. And I'm coming to you from MassiveJoes.com. Stay massive.